ladies and gentlemen, are going to talk about scrubbers, but will not dig into the very technical details. I just want to talk about what is the impact of scrubbers and what is the future of scrubbers. Exhaust gas after treatment, this is what's it all about. We have an internal combustion engine on board using different type of fuels. Paul has already pointed out the LNG, and Chris has already talked about HS heavy fuel oil, so I don't need to talk about that. Exhaust gas cleaning mainly consists of 3 different areas: scrubbers to clean the exhaust gases from SOx, but also from particulate matter and some other things. SCR technology is used for the reduction of NOx. NOx is also produced inside of the engine. SCR systems are very well known since the scandal that has been uncovered in the automobile industry, and fuel additives can also contribute to a positive impact. Now, this is just a sample of a scrubber. I want to talk about the open loop, closed loop, a hybrid system, but then I'm going to talk about what is the effect on particulate matter, heavy metals, and others. And we also need to talk about the future regulations. Basically, or I would assume that everybody in the room is familiar with the scrubber technology itself. We do have open loop scrubbers, we have closed loop scrubbers. An open loop scrubber has been described very perfectly by Chris already. An open loop scrubber takes up seawater, utilizes the alkalinity of the seawater to absorb and neutralize the SOx. The water then is discharged overboard after some kind of wash water treatment. In a closed loop system, the wash water is circulated inside of the scrubber. It's enriched by an alkaline substance, in normal cases sodium hydroxide. So these are the 2 different things. Closed loop means that there's nothing discharged to the sea while the scrubber is in operation. That creates some other problems, like how to store the effluents and the other things that are being filtered out of the wash water. However, these are the basic technology. Typically, those, for the time being, we see approximately 90% of the scrubbers being in order or at operation or installation during these times are open loop scrubbers, hybrid ready. Hybrid ready means they can later be upgraded to a closed loop system. A closed loop system requires more space because we have additional tanks on board. And then a closed loop system also requires more energy. Paul has already pointed out 1.5 to 2% is the energy penalty you have to pay while operating a scrubber. In a closed loop system, that might be a little bit higher. Why do we say it's more than the bridge technology? Because the scrubbers can do more than just SOx. They can filter out particulate matter. Chris has already touched on that, but also heavy metals, PAH, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and of course the sulfates. Well, I'm going to skip through that very quickly because Chris had already talked about that. The interesting point here is the scrubbers we have in operation today are designed according to the existing regulations. And that means the scrubbers today can have a certain amount of, or they can have a certain efficiency concerning particulate matter. Chris was a little bit high in the number, saying 90% of particulate matter can be filtered out. However, an optimized scrubber system can reach 80 to 95%. The efficiency of a scrubber concerning the particulate separation is linked to the back pressure. However, if I can absorb a higher back pressure, the filtration efficiency can be increased. Also heavy metals. This is also a very important point. The what we're expecting as of 2020, having more of those 0.5 fuels available in the shipping industry, is that the amount of so-called cat fines will increase. And cat fines is something that no one really wants to have injected into his engine. Cat fines not only consist of aluminum, it's also silicon. And there are natural heavy metals like zinc, like zinc, and iron and other materials coming from the crude oil, which will be burned inside of the engine. And those heavy metals can be also filtered out or precipitated in a wash water cleaning system. Polyaromatic hydrocarbons, they're also a critical thing. There is no perfect 100% combustion process in no engine of the world. So a small amount of the fuel, no matter what it is, will leave the engine or will leave the cylinder unburned. And this is the so-called unburned polyaromatic hydrocarbons. And scrubbers also have a huge potential to reduce them from the exhaust gas. The the PAH also can collect or can be collected or attached on soot particles. So this is also important to have a very good filtration efficiency concerning solid matter, because some of the hydrocarbons will stick to those particulate matter. So the better the particulate efficiency, the better the PAH efficiency. There are limitations issued by the IMO. What kind of concentrations might be allowed in the discharge water? We are installing systems on board of the vessel in order to clean up the wash water to meet those regulations. These regulations are what the existing technology is based on, and I don't know of any scrubber in the world, not from our company nor from our competitors, not meeting those regulations. So the regulations are not easy to map, but the technology is there and the systems can operate very accurately. The number of systems being installed over the last 12, 15 months has increased dramatically. For the time being, we're talking about 3,500 systems being in operation, which represents just a few % of the entire global fleet. However, the scrubber industry is expecting that the share of scrubbers being installed on vessels will increase. Maybe not with the same gradient, but at least it will increase. There are several figures out there how many scrubbers will be installed in the year 2025. Well, if I'd known that, I'd be in a different industry, but at least it will be a significant amount. However, it will not be 30 or 40% of the existing fleet. It will be more or less in the area of maybe 10, 15, 20% of the fleet, due to some limitations concerning shipyard capacities, engineering capacities, material capacities. Well, just a quick look on regulations itself. Paul just mentioned that he's 45 years in service in the marine industry, and 45 years ago, the first big regulation in Germany has been established in order to clean up the air in Germany. That was the TA Luft in 1974. And in order to meet, or in order to benefit from the air quality that we have today, scrubbers play an important role. In Europe, around 90% of all power plants are equipped with scrubbers. Scrubbers is not a new invention for the marine industry. Scrubbers are in place and in operation since 70 years. And without scrubbers, 90% of them are wet and 10% of them are dry. Without those scrubbers, we wouldn't have the air quality we are having today. So what really is interesting to see is that those regulations, several of them, were put in force and technologies were developed and invented to comply with those regulations. Now, what we're doing here now is, in 1997, the IMO has issued the MARPOL Annex 6. Then in 2008, we had the MEPC 184. That was the first regulation for the sulfur content. And then a few years later, we have the today's valid regulation, MEPC 259. And in 2019, just before 2020, we are starting to talk about the ban of open loop discharge water. And to me, that doesn't make sense at all. For the first time in the history, we extenuate a legislation which is not even in force. And that really makes it sort of difficult for the industry. It is confusing the shipping industry. It's jeopardizing the investments of the scrubber industry and of ship owners. And it's also weakening the position of IMO as a regulator. And it do harm to the image of the shipping industry at all. So before, or what we should do instead of that is, let's start with 2020. Let's start with the existing regulation. Let's comply with the sulfur cap and stick to MEPC 259. And let's gain the experiences during 2020 and 2021. And then we can see what kind of a research program is needed in order and accepted by all stakeholders on the impact of open loop scrubbers on the marine environment. Chris has already pointed out there are a good number of studies out there proving that the impact of open loop scrubbers has a positive impact on the environment. And then we, as the scrubber industry, we can then develop new technologies, new techniques in order for the filtration inside or the absorption inside of the scrubber, but also on the wash water treatment systems in order to make those scrubbers better. Over the last 30, 40 years, that has been taken on place, like on land like this. Regulation has been put in force. The industry has followed with technology. Then the regulators have seen, oh, it works. It's now state of the art. Now let's go one step further and make the regulation even tighter. This is a very healthy and a very productive process. So air pollution has a long history, and specifically on what we have learned on land could be applied to a certain extent to the marine industry. As I said, over the last 45, 50, 60 years, regulation has been gradually being lowered or being tighter for the emittents. The marine industry should follow the same path. Develop technologies, become better, become cleaner, and then we can talk about the next level of emissions regulations. So at the end of the day, it's really important that we need to get rid of that discussion, because the discussion taking place now concerning the ban of wash water of open loop is a discussion driven by emotions, driven by politics, and it's not driven by science and engineers. And I've got 25 seconds left now. That brings me to the end of this very quick presentation, and looking forward to your questions. Thank you.